Hey, boomers. So, question is, where can we travel now? 4th of July was yesterday. Things seem to be returning to normal here in the U.S., at least as best I can tell. Of course, I live in Florida, and Florida is a little different from the rest of the country, but, we're not wearing masks for the most part, and life has kind of returned to normal. Most everyone I know has been vaccinated, and I haven't heard of anyone recently coming down with the virus. So my questions have been arised. A lot of people have been asking me, where can you travel now? What's going on? So I got onto the internet and started checking it out. And little did I know that effective January 26th, the CDC in the US has made a new rule that says all passengers flying to the US from any foreign country will be required to present a negative test result when returning to the US. That means a viral test, a PCR or antigen test for current infection, within the 3 days before the flight to the US departs, and provide written documentation of their laboratory test result, which is a paper or electronic copy, to the airline, or provide documentation of having recovered from COVID-19. Airlines will ask passengers to fill out this COVID test attestation form to confirm the negative test result for all passengers or documentation of a recovery before they board. If you don't have proof of negative test or recovery, or choose not to take the test, the airline must deny boarding to the passenger. So if you don't want to get stranded wherever you're going, you need to make sure that before you get there, there's provisions to get one of these viral tests done in the 72 hours prior to your departure, or you may get stuck there. So that being said, and that applies to any country. So let's go down the list a little bit. Mexico, first of all. My family traveled to Cabo San Lucas last December of 2020, before this new rule came into place, and we had absolutely no problems. We stayed at the Pueblo Bonito Sunset Resort. It was absolutely beautiful. The weather was beautiful. The whales were swimming. We had a blast. We were required to wear masks when we were in public, and social distancing was being practiced. But otherwise, it was basically normal there. I mean, you went in a restaurant wearing a mask, you sit down, you take it off, you eat, you put it back on. Kind of similar to what was going on here. And we're going back there again in November, and apparently now we're going to have to get tested before we leave. And I'm hoping that the resort has provisions for the test. I noted that the Cabo San Lucas airport does provide emergency tests, but I think you'd have to probably have to go there the day before you leave, get your test, make sure you get your test, so you don't get stuck in a long line that makes you miss your plane. But otherwise, Mexico's open for business. Canada, however, is not. Starting July 5th, that's today, Americans can fly into Canada if they have proof of vaccination with an accepted vaccine, and if they enter from a direct flight from the U.S. And there's all kinds of steps you have to go to, and I've detailed them in my blog about how to go about getting permission to enter in Canada. And the requirements are so prohibitive that I have to ask, although I love Canada, is it really worth it? Let's wait until the COVID is over before we try to go to Canada. Central and South America. Many countries are restricting entry for travelers who have visited a various variant hotspot, including the UK, Brazil, and South Africa. These are the hotspots currently. Most countries in South America, such as Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Ecuador, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Panama, and Venezuela, as well as Peru, require a negative COVID test within 72 hours of arrival. So you got to get a test before you leave to go there, and then you got to get a test before you come back to get back in. Chile and Uruguay are not accessible to U.S. passengers. However, on the other hand, Colombia and Costa Rica are wide open with no test results required. Now, the Caribbean. We all love the Caribbean. Although global warming seems to be killing off the reefs in a lot of the Caribbean, the U.S. Virgin Islands are open for tourism. In order to enter St. Thomas or St. John, you have to prove a negative test prior to entry. It has to be sent in advance of travel, and you have to upload the results into the USVI travel portal prior to entry. So there's some unusual tests have to be done. Effective May 1 on the Bahamas, if you've got proof that you're fully vaccinated, with the final shot being more than 14 days prior to arrival, you may enter the Bahamas without restriction. And you have to visit the Bahama Tourism Health Visa portal and upload proof of vaccination, and then you'll get an approval to enter letter via email. This has to be done before you go. And there's some other things. Grand Cayman is open. There are things you need to do before you go, which is request authorization in advance via their website, and also another COVID test within 72 hours of arrival. St. Bart's is open with proof of vaccine and a negative test. Same deal. Most of the Caribbean is the same way. Proof of a negative test within 3 to 5 days prior to arrival. Jamaica, same thing. Proof of a test within 3 days of travel. Grenada, St. Kitts, St. Lucia, same thing. Puerto Rico is open, accepting flights from North American cities. You have to have a copy of your negative COVID test when you arrive at the airport. And they'll offer you a test at the airport. Even if the result is negative, you'll still have to quarantine and cover your own medical expenses and extended stay. Cuba. There are additional restrictions from Cuba to enter Cuba, which have come about since late 2019, eliminating many of the reasons that people were allowed to visit Cuba. So Cuba is pretty much back to no-fly zone. So Europe is back to being basically open to most people, and I've given you a breakdown by city or by country. Travel from the U.S. To Austria is now allowed as long as you have your CDC issued vaccination certificate indicating you've gotten your 2 shots, and also the negative test within 72 hours of travel. Most European cities are requiring this. So figure out a place to get your shot and get it done prior to traveling. Germany is now allowing unrestricted access to U.S. residents, regardless of vaccination status, as of June 20th. But you have to provide a negative COVID-19 test result within 72 hours. Same as most European countries. So get your test before you travel, and as long as you're negative, you should be good to go. Same with Iceland. Same with Ireland. Now Hungary apparently is closed to all foreigners, including Americans. Iceland is open as long as you've been vaccinated and you've had a positive, either a positive antibody test or a positive PCR test older than 14 days. And you also have to pre-register. Ireland has travel protocols, which are making it a little difficult, but you can still go if you've got a negative COVID test within 3 days. Italy, when their plan went into effect June 21st. Again, proof of vaccination and negative test within, in there, I think it's 14 days prior to arrival. And then basically it goes throughout Europe. Russia and Slovakia are closed to U.S. travelers. Who'd want to go anyway? Spain, Sweden, similar to the other places, test within 72 hours of travel, negative COVID test. Turkey, they've had some spikes lately. The U.S. State Department is saying don't go to Turkey due to terrorism and arbitrary detention. Wow, sounds like the bad old days. It's not on my bucket list. Ukraine, you can enter the country as a U.S. citizen. Again, negative test within 72 hours. Just don't go into the part where there's a civil war going on with Russia. And the UK, Britain, of course, they've had some blow-ups lately. But coming in from the U.S., you have to quarantine for 10 days and take 3 COVID tests, 1 within 3 days prior to departure, 2 after arrival, 1 on day 2, 1 on day 8 of the 10-day quarantine. So if you want to go to London, you got to quarantine for 10 days. So why bother? Australia, New Zealand, they've done good during the pandemic because their borders are closed. New Zealand's entry is strictly controlled, limited to persons with a critical purpose to travel. So New Zealand, Australia off the list. Asia, Cambodia is closed. China is closed. Japan is closed. In fact, they're having the Olympics here in a couple of weeks, and no foreigners will be allowed into Japan to attend the games as spectators. That's pretty crazy. Nepal has just reopened. Those of you thinking about climbing Mount Everest can get there. The Philippines has some requirements. Same with Singapore, mostly closed for short-term visitors. Americans are not allowed except for those who are dual citizens. So can't go to Singapore. You can go to South Korea, but you have to quarantine for 2 weeks. Makes it undesirable for most travelers, and it would definitely be undesirable for this traveler. Israel and Saudi Arabia, extremely limited. Americans are banned from travel to Saudi Arabia. Dubai, UAE, another negative test within 96 hours to go there. Africa, travel to anywhere in Africa is not recommended. And in most countries, it's barred, especially South Africa, where recent surges in COVID variants have erupted. Nigeria and Rwanda seem to have opened up to American passengers with proof of a negative COVID test taken within 72 hours of travel. So if you're looking for a safari or want to go see some elephants, you can still go to those 2 parts of Africa. So this is a huge blog that I wrote, basically covering most of the world. And if you're interested, go check it out. And if I've missed a place that you want to go, I put a link to an even more comprehensive review of what's going on in the rest of the countries of the world at the bottom. And that's about it. So, Boomer out.